I've been in Moscow for 7.5 years, and before that I first came in 1991, so I've seen Russia in many slices. And I think for the newcomers, if you're not interested in politics, it's a wonderful time to be here. The city has vastly improved over 91, over 2001, over 2006 when I came back. It's a lot cleaner, the parks are great, the outdoor advertising's been reduced. Visually, it's a lot pleasanter to look at. In my job, of course, I focus on the politics, and they have become very depressing in recent years since the departure of Dmitry Medvedev. There's been a constant closing and really not allowing society to breathe. Someone sneezes on Red Square and they're hauled off pretty much the way they were in 1968. So on one hand, yes, you can enjoy Moscow, and many people do, as long as you turn off the politics. For Russians, if they engage in politics, it's basically a dead end. And for foreigners, it's pretty depressing because we're living in a dictatorship. It really reminds me of Argentina, where I worked in the late 70s under the army generals, very conservative, essentially very reactionary. Russia has gone, it's an interesting contrast. If you go back to the 1920s, Russia was the world capital of the Comintern, of the Marxist revolution. Now, Moscow has become the world capital of world reaction. And they're, no, change is bad, and very conservative, essentially reactionary. I'm talking about the government, but the problem for Russian citizens is when they travel overseas, they end up having to defend their government, or explain their government, or being associated with their government. So it's hard for outsiders to put daylight between the Russian people and the government. So that, unfortunately, is really not going to change. It's one reason I'm leaving. I haven't suffered any great threats or anything. But the president, Vladimir Putin, is only 61. He's in great health. He looks 51. There's absolutely no reason from the physical standpoint why he couldn't run for the country another 10 to 15 years. And he may well be president for life. And that is, for someone who covers politics and news, is very dispiriting. People, when they hit about their 60s, there's a wonderful Brazilian phrase called dono da verdade, they know the truth. And Putin has hit several home runs. He stabilized this country both politically and economically. People's standard of living has soared under Vladimir Putin. Political violence has been suppressed, repressed, pushed off the table largely. And that, you can look at the Putin years, for many Russians, the best they've seen since 1905, in a century. But he is a former KGB operative from Dresden, East Germany, who has a highly conservative view of citizens, doesn't see them as citizens, sees them as subjects to be manipulated, and does not understand the free-flow of information, of ideas, of debate. And that makes for a very increasingly repressive situation here, where the independent press, whether it's Dosh TV or RIA or now maybe Echo Moskvy, they're all being squeezed out. And so there's no escape place, even for debate in the public sphere. These growing prohibitions. You can't say anything against Russia in the press. You can't talk about gay issues in the press. So this really strong censorship. And I'm afraid it's going to deform people. I'll just make a quick intercultural comparison. At one point I covered Canada for the New York Times, and I love Canada. It's a wonderful country. And I speak French. I covered Quebec, and I love the Quebecois. But the Quebecois politicians wanted to retain their power base, who were advocating separatism, independence. And the way you do that is you keep people dumb. You keep people monolingual. So you have a generation growing up in Quebec, a generation growing up in North America that does not speak English. They are handicapped, and they become paranoid and suspicious and have a inferiority complex. Putin is doing the same thing here, that he's inculcating people with crazy ideas, about Western conspiracies and gay issues and all sorts of issues, and kind of handicapping people. I mean, some of these ideas, like the new head of RIA Novosti believes that the hearts of gay people should be burned. That's really kooky. That is very kooky. Now, that kind of person in the US really would end up being a high school janitor or something, would have no future. And you cannot equip people in a modern society with ideas like that. They are just off the charts. And I don't believe in necessarily incriminating people for hate speech, but people who have very strange ideas are not world players. They become off to the side. And I'm afraid that this constant drumbeat of really kooky and crazy ideas in the Russian media, especially the TV, obviously, whether it's RT, which is just atrocious, or Russia 24, we're seeing this with Ukraine, demonizing the Ukrainians, who for 1,000 years have gone along very well with the Russians. You're filling people's heads up with useless, strange information. And it leads into a second thing, which is, what's the ideology here? Is it the ideology of hate? You hate the Ukrainians, you hate gay people, you hate Americans, you hate these. The list of people that hate is very long, the Kremlin hate list. I don't quite know what the love list is. I mean, people win the gold medal at the Olympics, sure. But there isn't a positive ideology there. In the Soviet times, at least they loved the cosmonauts and they loved, of course, the athletes. They loved the third world. But now it's real hateful stuff that requires a kind of perverse imagination to come up with. And I find that rather disturbing. And as a journalist, I cover politics and social trends. I can't just close my eyes and go out to great restaurants and have a good time. And I just find we're entering a very depressing political cycle in this country that I see no reason why it should end in the near future. And I personally don't want to devote another 5 years of my life to explaining it. This is the Cambodia Daily, which I'll be the executive editor of. It's in English and in Khmer, and has an editorial staff of 50. And it's sort of the go-to news site for news about Cambodia, a great training vehicle for young journalists, which will be a lot of my job, training the new generation of Indochina hands. Physically very portable. As you can see, it's about, what do you say, about 60% the size of the Moscow Times. So people can carry it around. And it'll be a lot of fun. And we also have a Burma Daily, which I'll also be editing. I'm just, that's a website. So executive editor of 2 newspapers, the Cambodia Daily and the Burma Daily. And a whole new set of problems and challenges and adventures. And I'm looking forward to it.